Hey guys, it's Mike Benetti again. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video review of the 2021 version of the Tucktec folding kayak. Those of you familiar with my previous video know that I worked to test out the 2020 version of the kayak. I tested both its ability to float when swamped and also my ability to self-recover it in case of emergency. We're going to be doing a lot of the same tests today. Some of the tools I have with me, as always, my paddle and my life jacket, my bail bucket, which is collapsible. You'll see me use this during the demonstration. And new today is a flotation bag. So you guys are going to see me put this into action. But before that, let me get this note assembled. Alright guys, I'm in the water ready to start my series of tests.
The first one I'm going to do is a basic buoyancy test. So I'm just going to fill the kayak with as much water as possible to see if it still floats. And as you can see, even filled to the brim with water, the Tucktec kayak manages to stay afloat. I'll leave it here just for a few more seconds to make sure there's no changes, but it looks like everything's good. Alright, for my next test I'm going to hang on to the back of the boat just to see if my added weight will make the kayak sink or not. But actually it still manages to stay afloat, which is important to know because if you find yourself in an emergency situation, such as out on open water without a life jacket, it's good to know that your kayak will still float and is a lifeline for you. So you can hang on to it until help arrives, or even swim it back to shore. Now filled with water, the kayak is heavy and relatively sluggish moving through the water, but you can swim with it, which I'll show in a second and later on in the video. If you have a bucket with you or some means to bail it, it's best to do that to lighten the kayak. It'll make it that much easier to swim back to shore with it. Alright, I'm just going to reset here. I'm going to check my seat clasp, make sure nothing came undone. But one interesting thing I found that the seat cushions float so well that once they hit the water, they tend to come up and out of their housing and float away. I recommend you guys find a more permanent way to secure them, whether it be gluing them to their housing or some other means. You definitely don't want to lose them in case your boat swamps and you find yourself in the water, because any extra flotation you have will be key. It was a little bit difficult for me to get them back into place, so in a few seconds here I'm just going to reset and start again with the boat dry. Alright, everything's back into place. And I'll start again by filling the kayak with water. So a question I've gotten before is, if the kayak is swamped, can you just get back into it? So I'm going to test that in just a minute. So I'll try for a basic side re-entry, just throwing myself over the side and trying to re-enter the boat. But as you can see, my added weight just pushes the kayak that much farther below the surface of the water to the point where you couldn't bail it out or use a pump or anything like that. And you see our seat cushion came out again. Alright, I'm going to start with a dry boat and take you through just a regular scenario. You're out on the water paddling and you fall out of the boat. What do you do in that situation? So I'll go ahead and get into my ready position and then just go ahead and throw myself over the side into the water. So once I hit the water, I usually follow a few key steps. The first one is always to secure myself. So that means checking my life jacket, making sure any zippers or buckles are secure, and that I'm safe and secure. From then my focus goes to my boat. So you want to try to recover the boat as quick as possible, which means just flipping it over, trying to get as little water as possible into it. Once I've done that, I'll stow my paddle on board so I don't lose that. And then the next step is just going around the boat, checking the latches, making sure everything is secure. Sometimes during my testing, once I hit the water, the latches will turn a quarter of a turn. I've never had any come completely undone, so you want to make sure that everything is just nice and secure so you're not taking on any more water. At this point, I decided that my paddle is just going to be in my way if I try to re-enter the boat, so I broke it in half and pushed it off to the side. Now I'm going to try a basic side re-entry here, just up and over the side. Got to a point where I was almost in, but there was just too much water on board, and the boat flexed, and I was swamped. I'm going to try another side re-entry here, this time with the boat dry, so I've emptied out all the water. See if I can get back in. Again, the boat flexed a little too much in the middle and took on too much water and swamped. Alright, so on the side here I'm blowing up a flotation bag. I'm going to give that a test. In the meantime, you'll notice in the kayak there's an indentation in the middle. That's from my point of trying to re-enter the boat where the boat flexed. So just because it is a very flexible and lightweight material, it does give way under the weight of your body. Just know that these kayaks are not really designed for rescue situations, for re-entry. So when you do put your full body weight over the side, it tends to cave in and drop down below the surface of the water, making it a little more difficult. But we'll talk about that later. Flotation bag usually takes about a minute or two to blow up. Really not a hard process. The valves in them are very good. And I found that they hold their air very well and they're very durable. So before I switch to the flotation bag, there's just one more thing I want to try. If you're familiar with my previous video, you'll know that I was able to do a Cowboy mount re-entry with the 2020 kayak. So I want to give that a shot here. Traditionally, a Cowboy mount is done in the stern of the boat, but it's not really practical with this kayak, so I always do it over the bow. So I'm going to get into position here and just pull down on the front of the boat and basically try to hoist myself up and into the boat. Unfortunately, due to the lightweight and flexible nature of the kayak, it just kind of gave way a little bit and swamped with water. Alright, here's our flotation bag, which at first looked huge. I didn't think it was going to fit in the kayak, but it actually does fit really well. And I'll have a link for it in the video if anyone's interested in purchasing one. It's pretty snug, and your best bet is going to be what I'm doing here in a minute, is just to let some air out of it and get it positioned into the stern of the kayak and then reinflate it if needed. It does take up a good amount of space in the boat, so you'll notice that you're going to sacrifice some storage behind your seat in order to have the additional flotation, but that's a trade-off a lot of people are willing to make. Alright, so now with the flotation bag in place, I'm going to get back into the boat and get back into a paddling on the water scenario. Position and into the water. And again, same process. Secure yourself, secure the boat, self-rescue. Got my life jacket on nice and tight. Get to the boat, flip it over. And get my paddle on board. And go ahead and swim around the boat and check all my clasps. So in this instance, one of my clasps did come undone slightly. So I'm just working to get that back into place. Relatively easy. And it looks like all the other clasps are in good condition. Now you notice there's a good amount of water on board from when I fell into the pool. Here you could see some of my swim techniques. If you did need to swim to shore at this point, you could either float on your back with it or swim forward with it. I'm going to try for a basic side re-entry again, this time with some water on board. And surprisingly, it was very difficult. I thought the flotation would help me in this case, but actually a lot of the water that came on board that would have normally been evenly distributed throughout the kayak was now forced to the front of the boat and swamped me even a little more easily. So your best bet in this situation is to have the added flotation, but to also bail any water out of the boat before you try to self-rescue. And that's what I'm going to show you guys next. You'll notice I position my bail bucket in the boat with me. I generally always paddle with that. Again, checking my jacket. Getting to the boat, turning it over. And getting my paddle on board. And start the process of checking the boat. Checking all the latches. Again, if your best option is to swim to shore, if you're close enough, definitely recommend doing that. Alright, so I'm working on unhooking my bail bucket now, and I'm going to start the tedious process of bailing out the boat. link to the bucket on my video page too. Something that's good to have, not only in this situation if you're trying to self-rescue, but just in general if you're out on water. Maybe you go to a lake with a lot of power boats going by, creating big waves. Maybe you take water on your boat. So it's good to have something like this. So now I'm just holding onto the boat, taking little, like half or quarter buckets of water out at a time. You really want to get as much water out as possible, because that's a lot of added weight on your boat. And when you're trying to re-enter, any weight will work against you and potentially swamp you again. You notice when I get tired, I just take breaks. You could just hang out at the bow of the boat, just hold on and let your flotation device do its job. Just relax, pace yourself. It's not really an exhausting process if you take your time with it. You don't have to take full buckets of water out every time. You don't have to work non-stop. Work in little 10-second intervals, take breaks. You really want to preserve as much energy as possible. In case this doesn't work for you and you do eventually need to swim back to shore or something like that. Some people ask about bilge pumps, which are good, and I do have one, but in this situation I find it to be, not really practical to have to lean over the boat and pump a long handle up and down. I think that would take a lot more time and energy. The bell bucket's really a simple and quick solution. I would edit this for time, but I really want you to see, the guys to see the process, just how long it takes. I think I've been at this for 3 or 4 minutes now. It's mostly done, just taking a look to see how much extra water is on there. And get my paddles out of the way. Alright, so at this point I'm confident that I've gotten enough water off the boat, and I'm ready to try a side re-entry. Oh, scratch that. There's some more water in there. Go ahead and clip my bucket back onto the boat so I don't lose it. And then we're ready to try self-rescue. There's really no trick to this other than try to work as quick as possible. Try not to keep the boat under the water as long as you don't take on too much water. I got most of the way back in, but then the water I had on board destabilized me and tipped me over. I'm going to show another side rescue attempt. Again, most of the way back in, and I leaned a little too much to the side. Another attempt. Most of the way back in, I'm in, but then I made the mistake of pushing down on the side rails to reposition myself and swamp the boat. This time I'm doing it from the other side, give you a little bit of a different angle. And you can see just how much the boat flexes when you try to re-enter. And if you don't move quick, you'll swamp it. I figure why not? I'll try another Cowboy mount re-entry, this time from the stern. But the boat tipped to the side a little too easily. Another re-entry attempt. And this time I was successful. Managed to get back in, didn't take on too much water. I did realize at this point I didn't have my bail bucket on board with me. And I did take on a decent amount of water that I needed to bail out. And one final attempt. Again, successful. But again, I don't have my bail bucket with me. And that water that you take on board with you does make you rock side to side and does destabilize you. So it's important to always have that in the event that you are successful and get back on board. You need to be able to bail that water out. So as you can see, the process is not the easiest, but it is, again, possible. I always encourage you guys to do a few things. Number one, always wear a life jacket. Don't just have it on board with you, always wear it, because you never know when you'll find yourself in an emergency situation. The second is always paddle close to shore. Now, the easiest thing to do in case of emergency is to get back to shore. You know, take your boat, empty the water out, fix any latches that came undone, and get back out there. And the third is always use the boat in the conditions that it was intended to be used, which means no fast currents, no rapids. These boats are lightweight and obviously portable, and they're designed to be used on relatively calm waters. I've used mine in over 30 different lakes and reservoirs without any issues whatsoever. Alright guys, thanks for watching my video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them for me. And have fun out there.